The Man Who Never Existed. Disclaimer: this story is based on true historical records, recreated for educational and informational purposes. Spyward story neither supports nor criticizes any agency or nation. Our mission is to bring real espionage stories to light with balance and respect. Welcome to Spyward Story, where real-life espionage unfolds like cinema. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more real spy documentaries. In the quiet streets of Tel Aviv, the Mossad headquarters stirred with tension. A man stood in the center of a dimly lit room, Eli Cohen, the man who was about to disappear from existence. To the world, he was ordinary, calm, polite, unnoticed. But to Mossad, he was something more, a blank page, ready to be rewritten. In the early 1960s, Syria had become a growing threat. Israel needed eyes in Damascus. Not just any spy, but someone who could live, breathe, and blend among Syrians so completely that even suspicion would pass him by. Eli was chosen. Born in Egypt, fluent in Arabic and French, he could merge into Arab society seamlessly. One secret meeting was all it took, and Eli Cohen's real life quietly ended. At a secret Mossad facility near Herzliya, his transformation began. They erased his past, destroyed his records, and built a new identity from the ground up. He became Kamel Amin Thaabet, a rich Syrian businessman who had lived in Argentina and was now returning to Damascus to invest in his homeland. Mossad crafted fake letters, bank statements, and business records, even family correspondence. He was trained in codes, secret transmissions, surveillance, and how to survive interrogation. He learned Syrian culture, army ranks, dialects, and social manners. Eli no longer existed, only Kamel Amin Thaabet remained. Before his mission, Mossad chief Meir Ahmet told him, "You won't just collect secrets, Eli, you'll live among them." Those words stayed with him. In 1961, Kamel arrived in Buenos Aires. He was charming, confident, and patriotic. He began to build friendships among Syrian businessmen and diplomats, speaking passionately about rebuilding Syria. Within months, everyone believed in his identity. The Syrian embassy admired him, even recommended his return to Damascus as a potential investor. The web was working exactly as Mossad planned. Back in Tel Aviv, coded signals reached Mossad through secret transmissions. Eli's reports were precise: names, movements, conversations, all disguised in numerical codes. His information helped Mossad understand Syria's political pulse. By mid-1962, Mossad decided Eli Cohen was ready for Damascus. That night, in his Buenos Aires apartment, Eli stared at his false passport. The name Kamel Amin Thaabet shone faintly under the lamp. He thought of his wife Nadia and their unborn child in Israel. Folding a photo of his family, he whispered a prayer and vanished into the life of a ghost. The man who landed in Damascus would be celebrated, trusted, and feared, yet no one would ever know his truth. You're watching Spyward Story. Tell us in the comments where you're joining from and make sure to subscribe. Because in part 2, The Road to Damascus, Eli will enter Syria's heart, where every smile hides suspicion, and every friend could be an enemy. The Road to Damascus. The winter of 1962 wrapped Damascus in cold mist when a man named Kamel Amin Thaabet stepped out of a black car in front of the Semiramis Hotel. To the guards and hotel staff, he was a wealthy Arab businessman returning home after years in Argentina. To the Mossad, he was a phantom sent into the beating heart of Israel's most hostile neighbor. Kamel walked with calm confidence. Every movement, every gesture had been rehearsed. His Arabic accent carried a faint North African flavor, enough to sound genuine but not too perfect to draw attention. The reception clerk greeted him with warmth. His reputation had already arrived before him. "Welcome home, Mr. Thaabet," he said. "Damascus has missed its sons." In his suite, Eli unpacked carefully. A small black case, hidden beneath layers of clothes, contained his radio transmitter. It was his only link to Tel Aviv. Each night, when the city slept, he would whisper through coded pulses to Mossad headquarters that could shift the balance of intelligence. In the Middle East, within weeks, Kamel became a familiar face in Damascus elite circles. He attended banquets, charity events, and political gatherings. His charm disarmed even the most suspicious generals. He spoke of Arab unity, praised Syria's strength, and donated generously to military welfare funds. The illusion was perfect. One evening, at a party hosted by a Syrian defense official, Kamel's charisma drew the attention of several higher-ranking officers. Among them was Colonel Amin al-Hafiz, a powerful figure in the Ba'ath Party. The two men shared cigars, laughter, and dreams of Syria's future. It was a friendship that would open doors Mossad had never imagined possible. Through these connections, Eli gained access to sensitive discussions plans about troop movements, new Soviet weapon shipments, and even early drafts of border defenses along the Golan Heights. He memorized every detail, later transmitting them in precise coded bursts. At Mossad headquarters, his reports caused disbelief. The information was so deep, so accurate, that even senior analysts questioned its authenticity. But soon, field verification proved every word true. Eli Cohen Kamel Amin Thaabet was inside Syria's power core. As months turned into years, Kamel's influence grew. He bought a luxurious home in the Abu Ramain district, not far from the homes of Syria's top officials. His guests included cabinet ministers, military generals, and intelligence officers. At his parties, music and laughter flowed freely, but behind the noise, Eli's eyes scanned every uniform, every insignia, every face. He developed subtle ways to record intelligence. His curtains concealed a camera lens pointed at the street. His walking stick contained microfilm rolls. Even casual conversations became intelligence goldmeats. Mossad began to map Syrian artillery placements, defenses, and fortifications based entirely on his quiet observations. Despite the danger, Eli remained calm. At times, he stood on the balcony, watching Damascus lights flicker in the night, thinking of his wife Nadia and children far away in Israel. Each coded message he sent was a thread pulling him deeper into danger and farther from home. By 1964, Kamel had become a trusted friend to almost every important man in Syria. When the new government rose to power, Colonel Amin al-Hafez became president and one of his closest confidants was none other than Kamel Amin Thaabet. Now, Eli Cohen stood at the very gates of Syria's military secrets. What began as an infiltration had turned into something much larger. A spy who had become indispensable. A spy among generals in the high walls of Damascus, where secrets weighed more than gold. Kamel Amin Thaabet had become more than a businessman. He was now a man of influence. Ministers respected him, army generals sought his company, and even the president himself trusted his opinions. What no one knew was that every dinner, every handshake, every toast was part of the most daring espionage act of the century. By 1964, Syria's political landscape was shifting fast. Military coups and rival factions made the capital a web of paranoia. But in that confusion, Kamel thrived. His house had turned into a meeting place for the country's elite, a space where officers loosened their tongues under the comfort of wine and music. Behind his polite smile, Eli Cohen's mind recorded every word like a silent camera. He had learned every inch of Syria's defense strategy, every hidden camp, every tunnel under the Golan Heights. During one military visit, when Syrian engineers discussed fortifying the southern border, Kamel cleverly asked, why not plant trees around the outposts? It would provide shade for the soldiers. The officers nodded, and months later, Mossad used those very trees as perfect bombing markers during the Six-Day War. Every detail mattered. He memorized the locations of bunkers, ammunition depots, and artillery ranges. He reported fuel shortages, morale issues, and the Syrian army's internal rivalries. Mossad called his information the heartbeat of Damascus. At times, Kamel joined military tours near Quneitra, the forward command of Syrian defenses. Wearing an officer's uniform, he stood among real generals, taking photos that he would later send back to Tel Aviv. The irony was surreal, a foreign spy standing at the front line of Syria's defenses, treated as one of their own. Meanwhile, in Israel, analysts could now visualize the enemy's exact strategies. But Eli's intelligence saved thousands of lives. Each code he sent home was a weapon more powerful than any missile. But Mossad also knew that success came with a price. The longer he stayed, the higher the risk grew. Some within Mossad began to urge his recall, fearing exposure. Yet Eli resisted. Just a little more, he insisted. There's still more to know. His devotion to duty was unshakable, but behind his calm exhaustion began to show. He started sleeping less, his eyes heavy with secrets. The stress of living two lives. Eli, the husband and father, and Kamel, the spy, began to tear at his soul. Still, he could not stop. In 1965, Damascus buzzed with suspicion. The Syrian counterintelligence service, aided by Soviet experts, began tracing strange radio signals believed to be coming from within the capital. They were determined to find the source. Eli had no idea the net was slowly tightening around him. Yet that spring, as he hosted one of his grandest gatherings, surrounded by officers and dignitaries, he smiled with quiet pride. He had done what no spy in history had ever done: infiltrated an entire government and walked freely among its generals. The trap in the sky. The year was 1965. Damascus had changed, and so had Eli Cohen, the confident businessman who once moved through the city's elite with ease now carried the weight of 100 secrets behind his calm eyes. The nights had grown colder, and the air thicker with suspicion. The Syrian Intelligence Directorate had begun to chase whispers of a mysterious radio signal transmitting out of Damascus. What Eli didn't know was that, far away in a Soviet research lab, a new device called Direction Finder had been developed. It could track hidden radio frequencies, the very ones Mossad relied on for their agents. Syria, through its Soviet advisors, had obtained one. The game was about to change. Yet Eli's mission continued relentlessly. Every few nights, at precisely 2 a.m., he would lock his door, draw his curtains, and power on the small transmitter hidden in his nightstand. His fingers, steady but trembling from exhaustion, tapped out Morse-coded messages, military maps, new promotions, defense meetings, and troop rotations. His room glowed dimly in the light of a small lamp, the silent rhythm of his signal pulsing through the dark sky toward Tel Aviv. He didn't know that somewhere across town, a Soviet team was slowly triangulating that signal. Each night, their van moved closer. Meanwhile, Kamel Amin Thaabet's public life had reached its peak. He was now a trusted friend of Syria's defense minister and regularly invited to high-level briefings. He walked into the ministry as if born to it. No one questioned him. He had access to everything: topographic maps, artillery plans, and even internal correspondence with Soviet military advisors. Mossad's confidence in him was absolute. But Mossad had also begun to worry. Some agents in Europe warned that Soviet counterintelligence was developing new radio detection technology. "It's time to bring him back," one senior officer suggested, but Eli's reply, sent in cipher, was firm: "Not yet. I am closer than ever. Just a few more reports, and the picture will be complete." In his final weeks, Eli attended a major military event at Quneitra, near the Golan Heights. Syrian officers showed him the new defense lines, anti-air batteries, and troop shelters. He noted every detail, and at one point, when officers discussed camouflage, he made a subtle suggestion: "You should plant eucalyptus trees near the outposts to hide them from the air." That single comment, made casually, would later allow Israel's Air Force to identify every Syrian position, because each tree marked a military site. But while he was becoming a hero to Damascus, the walls were closing in. The Syrian intelligence had begun night patrols, checking rooftops and hotel rooms for transmissions. Their Soviet-built vans were detecting faint bursts around the Abu Ramain district, Eli's neighborhood. One night, as he prepared to send a long transmission, a knock at the door startled him. It was his landlord, complaining of a power fluctuation. Eli forced a smile, handled it calmly, and waited another hour before resuming. But by then, the Syrian detection vans had locked onto the signal's source within a few blocks. 2 nights later, January 18, 1965, just before dawn, Syrian security sealed off the entire street. As Eli's transmitter clicked and sparked, the vans outside began flashing lights. Soldiers stormed the building. Eli barely had time to hide the device when the door burst open. Within seconds, the room was filled with armed officers. They found the transmitter still warm, the message half sent. His eyes met theirs, and for the first time in years, Eli Cohen had no disguise left. He was arrested on the spot. The silence that followed was suffocating. Within hours, the news spread across Damascus. A foreign spy had been captured. No one could believe it. The elegant, generous businessman, the man who hosted generals, dined with ministers, was accused of being an Israeli agent. In Mossad headquarters, the coded signals stopped abruptly. The operators stared at their consoles in disbelief. The line that had pulsed faithfully for years was now dead. The silence was deafening. In prison, Eli remained calm. He was interrogated for weeks, sometimes harshly, sometimes softly, but never broke. The Syrians brought Soviet experts to verify his guilt. They matched the transmitter, his notes, his cipher pads, all undeniable evidence. One of the investigators asked him, "Why did you do it?" Eli looked him in the eyes and said quietly, "Because I believed it was right for my people, and because I could." Even his captors, though furious, could not deny his courage. There were rumors that some officers who had once called him friend wept when they saw him behind bars. Back in Israel, his wife Nadia waited for news that never came. Weeks later, she received a short-coded message through Mossad's internal line. "The sun has set." It was the agency's way of confirming their greatest asset was lost. As international pressure mounted, diplomats tried to save him. Appeals came from the Pope, from Western leaders, and even from neutral countries, but Syria refused. Eli Cohen, the man who had become a shadow in Damascus, was now the center of the world's attention. The man who once walked among generals had finally been caught in a trap, not on the ground, but in the sky, through the very signals that made him a legend. The capture and trial the morning of January 19, 1965, broke cold and silent over Damascus. Inside a heavily guarded compound of the Syrian Military Intelligence Directorate, Eli Cohen sat alone in an interrogation chamber, a small concrete room lit by a single bulb that flickered above his head. The walls were bare except for a steel table, a chair, and a tape recorder whirring softly in the corner. He had not slept for more than 2 days. His wrists were bruised from the handcuffs, his shirt torn, yet his eyes calm, alert, unwavering, held the same focus that once made him Mossad's finest operative. The door creaked open. Colonel Ahmed Suadani, the man who had ordered his capture, stepped in, followed by 2 Soviet advisors. On the table lay the evidence: the radio transmitter, cipher pads, and maps found in his home. "Mr. Kamel Amin Thaabet Suadani," began, his voice low but sharp, or should I say Eli Cohen of Israel. Eli said nothing. The colonel leaned closer. "You've betrayed our country. Tell me, what was your mission? Who are your contacts? Who else is working with you?" The room fell silent. Then Eli spoke, his voice steady, almost detached. "My mission," he said softly, "was to serve my country as you serve yours." For a brief moment, even the colonel paused. There was no fear in Eli's tone, only conviction. But the questioning continued, hour after hour. Each session was recorded, every answer compared to intercepted transmissions. Slowly, the web of evidence closed around him. In Tel Aviv, Mossad confirmed the worst. Eli Cohen had been caught. His last incomplete transmission matched the time of the raid. Within hours, emergency meetings were held at the Prime Minister's office. "Is there any chance he's alive?" someone asked. The reply came grimly, "Yes, but not for long." Back in Damascus, Eli's world had shrunk to the 4 walls of his cell. Yet the guards noticed something unusual. He never begged, never pleaded. Instead, he spent his hours writing notes on small scraps of paper, prayers, letters to his wife Nadia, and reflections on his choices. Weeks passed. The interrogations turned into formal investigations. Syrian state media began to whisper about a great spy in our midst, and soon the rumor exploded into headlines. Newspapers printed sensational stories. The Israeli infiltrator who deceived generals and presidents. Crowds gathered outside the prison, chanting slogans of revenge. But within the walls, a strange respect had formed. Officers who had known him as Kamel could not reconcile that charming friend with the accused enemy before them. One young soldier confessed to a senior officer, "Sir, I can't believe this man is our enemy. He speaks of honor as if it's something sacred." By February 1965, the trial began. Cameras were banned, but every seat in the courtroom was taken. Generals, ministers, journalists, and Soviet advisors filled the room. The judge, Colonel Mahmoud Al-Khatib, presided over the proceedings, his face stern and unreadable. Eli was led in, wearing a simple grey suit. Chains clinked faintly around his ankles. Yet he held himself with quiet dignity, nodding politely to the guards. A hush fell over the courtroom. The prosecutor began. This man, under the false identity of Kamel Amin Thaabet, infiltrated the highest ranks of our government. He provided the enemy with military secrets, plans, and defense maps. For this, he deserves no mercy. Witnesses were called generals who had once shared dinners and laughter with him. Each testified, their voices shaking. One said, "He fooled us all." But even now, I wish it were not true. When it was Eli's turn to speak, he rose slowly, his voice carried through the chamber. "I never hated Syria," he said. "I never sought harm to its people. But I had a duty to protect my own nation, as you protect yours. We live in a world where peace is a dream, and men like me are its shadows." For a moment, the entire room fell silent. Even the judge looked down as if struggling to remain impartial. The Soviet advisor whispered to Suidani, "He speaks like a soldier, not a spy." Outside, the pressure was mounting. Foreign diplomats from the Vatican, France, and even neutral countries appealed for clemency. Pope Paul VI sent a personal request to the Syrian president, but the leadership stood firm. "He humiliated our intelligence," one minister said. "If we pardon him, we lose our honor." In his final letter to Nadia, smuggled through a sympathetic guard, Eli wrote, "My beloved Nadia, do not cry for me. My heart is at peace. Tell our children their father was not afraid. I leave this world knowing that I did my duty, and that one day, perhaps the distance between our peoples will be shorter." When the verdict was read on May 8, 1965, the air inside the courtroom was suffocating. The judge's words came slowly, for espionage against the state. The court sentences the accused, Eli Cohen, to death by hanging. There was no outburst, no shouting. Eli simply bowed his head, murmured a short prayer in Hebrew, and whispered, "It is finished." In Tel Aviv, the news hit like a thunderclap. Radio stations went silent for a minute of mourning. The Israeli government made a final plea for mercy, offering prisoner exchanges and humanitarian appeals. But Syria refused all requests. Inside his cell, Eli prepared for the inevitable. On the night before his execution, he asked for pen and paper. His last note read, "I asked forgiveness from God, from my people, and from those I deceived. I wish peace for all who suffer from the wars of men." That night, the guards heard him humming a Hebrew melody, soft, sorrowful, fading into silence. As dawn approached on May 18, 1965, the prison gates opened to a waiting truck. Eli was led out, calm and composed, his eyes lifted toward the pale light of the morning sky. Reporters and soldiers lined the street, silent as he passed. When he reached Marjay Square, the gallows stood tall against the rising sun. The crowd murmured, "Cameras ready." A black cloth was placed over his head. Moments before the lever was pulled, Eli's voice broke through the silence. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." The trapdoor opened, and with it, one of the greatest chapters in the history of espionage came to an end. The world mourned. Newspapers from London to New York carried his photograph. Israel declared him a hero. Syria called him a traitor. But history would remember him as both a man who lived and died between two nations, loyal to one, respected by the other. Even today, decades later, the place where he stood remains etched in memory, not as a symbol of victory or defeat, but as a reminder of what courage looks like when surrounded by enemies. The legacy of Eli Cohen. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you watching Spy Ward Story from? And if you love true espionage documentaries based on real intelligence missions, don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned, because today's story dives deep into the aftermath of one of the most legendary spies in modern history, Eli Cohen. The year was 1965. Damascus had returned to its uneasy calm. After the hanging of the man once known as Kamel Amin Thaabet, the city moved on, at least on the surface. But within the dark corridors of Middle Eastern intelligence, the ghost of Eli Cohen refused to fade. In Tel Aviv, Mossad's headquarters was cloaked in silence. Eli's final transmission had been recovered and archived, his last coded words now part of Mossad's secret records. Director General Meir Amit, a man known for his calm precision, gathered his senior officers and said quietly, "He is gone, but what he built will guide us for decades." Every Mossad trainee, every new operative who joined after 1965 learned Eli Cohen's story. His courage, his methods, his psychological depth all became the blueprint for future intelligence missions. Training manuals now bore the phrase, "Remember Damascus, remember Cohen." But for the Cohen family, the story was far from over. In Bat Yam, Nadia Cohen waited, hoping for one miracle, the return of Eli's body. Days turned into weeks, then years. She wrote letter after letter to international organizations, to presidents, even to the United Nations. "Let me bury my husband," she pleaded, "so our children can visit his grave." But Damascus remained silent. The Syrian government refused every request. Eli Cohen was buried in an undisclosed location, guarded and unmarked. His resting place remains a mystery to this day. Meanwhile, within Israel, the government declared him a national hero. Streets, schools, and intelligence academies were named in his honor. His portrait was hung in Mossad's Hall of Heroes. For Israel, Eli Cohen was not just a spy, he was a symbol of ultimate sacrifice. In the years following his death, something extraordinary happened. Mossad's operations in Arab territories became bolder, more calculated, more psychological. They studied how Eli built trust, how he read emotions, how he used empathy as a weapon. Eli Cohen didn't infiltrate Syria with guns or gadgets. He used human connection, charm, intellect, and the ability to become one of them. He once wrote in his diary, "The greatest disguise is understanding. When you truly understand your enemy, you no longer wear a mask. You become invisible." Decades later, when Israel launched Operation Orchard in 2007 to destroy a secret nuclear reactor in Syria, intelligence officers still referenced Eli's notes and maps from the 1960s. His information, gathered under a false identity 40 years earlier, had contributed to understanding Syria's strategic thinking, but the legend didn't end in intelligence files. It reached art, literature, and film. Movies, books, and series brought his name to the world stage. Yet Nadia Cohen, now older and quieter, said in an interview, "They call him a hero. But for me, he was a husband, a father. I just want his remains home." In Damascus, some older officers who once knew Kamel spoke in whispers about the man who fooled them all. One of them, retired Colonel Farouk al-Hamid, confessed in an interview before his death, "If I had known who he really was, I would still have shaken his hand. He played his part perfectly. He respected us, even as he deceived us." The story of Eli Cohen slowly became more than a tale of espionage. It turned into a mirror of humanity, a reminder that even in the world of shadows, there are codes of honor. Across Israel, every year, on May 18th, people light candles for him. In schools, children learn how one man's bravery saved countless lives. And in Mossad's secret training facility, new recruits walk past a stone wall engraved with his name. They pause for a moment of silence before stepping into their missions. "He still works with us," one Mossad instructor once said with a faint smile. "Every time we go undercover, we take Eli with us." Even the Syrian people, after decades, could not erase his legend. Locals who had never met him still knew his name, whispered in cafes and old military clubs. "That man from Argentina, he nearly became our defense minister." It's true, had Eli Cohen not been caught in early 1965, he was being considered for a senior position within Syria's Ministry of Defense. Imagine an Israeli spy on the brink of becoming one of the most powerful men in Syria. The course of Middle Eastern history could have changed forever, but fate, as always, had its own plans. Years later, Mossad made repeated secret efforts to recover his remains through intermediaries, through prisoner swaps, through diplomatic back channels. All failed. His body was never returned. Still, Eli Cohen lives in every mission that values intellect over aggression, patience over speed, empathy over deception. His shadow walks the hallways of Mossad's training academy, where agents whisper before field deployment, "Remember Eli," and somewhere in the silence of the desert winds near Damascus, perhaps a nameless grave lies beneath the sand, holding the man who lived two lives, served two worlds, and became immortal in both. This is Spy Ward Story, where we bring you the untold legends of courage, deception, and loyalty. Don't forget to comment where you are rewatching from and subscribe for more real-life espionage sagas that changed history forever.